I'm Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome to Resiliency Matters. This is where we take the big resiliency research and best practices and break it down into small bite-sized pieces that you can begin using immediately to strengthen yourself and others. What if you could learn from a woman who has sold more than 2 million copies of her books in 30 languages and counting? Would you spend the next 28 minutes with us? What if, in the next 10 minutes, you could learn how to become happier? Would you be willing to hang out with us? Who is us? My other half today is Gretchen Rubin, best-selling author of The Happiness Project, Happier at Home, and her latest release, Better Than Before. Gretchen breaks the mold, borrowing strategies from ancient wisdom all the way to contemporary sciences. And we are breaking the mold with today's show. Gretchen was in town to speak at a conference, had a tight connection between flights, couldn't get to the studio, and so I went to the conference center to have a sit down with her. You will join us in the conference center. It starts a little bit noisy. We started taping at break. It gets better, so stay with us. And thank you for learning this information in a little different way today, but it's worth staying with us, and I will see you back here for tool number 1. Here's Gretchen. Number 1, to be happier, you have to think about feeling good, feeling bad, and feeling right in the atmosphere of growth.
Yeah, and then this I figured out because I was trying to understand, how do you even think about happiness and a happy life? And so feeling good, I think, is easy to understand. You want to have more joy, more love, more fun. And then feeling bad, you want to have less guilt, less remorse, less anger, less boredom. And so those are pretty easy to see. You want more of one and less of the other. Feeling right, sometimes we do something that doesn't make us feel good, but we do it because it makes us feel right. So for instance, maybe you put up with a really bad commute because you want to live in a certain school district for your children. So it's all about feeling right, feeling like you're making the right decisions that reflect your values, even though it might not make you happier in a kind of immediate sense. And then an atmosphere of growth took me a long time to understand. That's it. We're happier when we have a feeling of growth, when we're making something better or growing or learning something or teaching someone or improving things. And so, you know, whether it's gardening or training your dog to do tricks or raising a child or helping a nonprofit to get their books in order, anytime you have that atmosphere of growth, it's an engine of happiness. So those are the 4 elements of a happy life.
So that challenge.
Yes.
Rising up to meet it. Okay, number 2, one of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make other people happy. One of the best ways to make other people happy is to make yourself happy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get that we're happier when we make others happy. And sometimes people don't act like that's a bad thing. Like somehow that means that everything you do is selfish. Because if you do something nice for someone else, it's going to just make you feel good. So, you know, there's no altruism. But to me, that's like one of the nicest things about human nature is that we're made happy by doing good for other people. That's a positive thing, I think, and that it's a source of gratification that we never tire of. But I think often people don't understand as well that one of the best ways to make other people happy is to be happy ourselves. There's something called emotional contagion. When we're happier, we help others to be happier. And so by worrying about our own happiness, it's not selfish or self-indulgent, because when we're happy ourselves, we're more able to turn outward and think about other people and the problems of the world.
Okay, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes, I think about this a lot with parenting. You know, we're like, any one Saturday seems like it takes forever to go from morning to night, but then kindergarten passes in a flash. And so I just always try to remind myself that, you know, instead of trying to get through something, really to enjoy it and remember, you know, right now I feel like it's a huge pain to use a stroller, but you know, the day will come, and in my case that day has already come when I look back with nostalgia for the days when I was pushing that stroller.
You're not happy unless you think you're happy.
Yes, I mean, because one of the things is that happiness is very easy to take for granted. It's like health or money. When you have it, it's easy to take it for granted. And so in order to feel happy, you have to realize that you're happy. And this is, I think, why cultivating gratitude and mindfulness is so important, because when you think about how happy you are, then you can really experience it. And if you don't pay any attention to it, a lot of times the only time you realize that you're happy is when something happens that means you're not happy.
So that awareness.
Yeah, it's that awareness.
Number 5, I can build a happy life only on the foundation of my own nature.
Right. You know, you'd think it would be so easy to know ourselves because we just hang out with ourselves all day long, but a lot of times people assume that something is true for them because other people expect that it's true, or they assume that it's true for everyone. But if we want to be happy, our lives have to reflect what's true about us. So for instance, you know, I'm a person who I don't really like music that much. And so for me, music is not a big element of a happy life, whereas for someone else that might be a hugely important aspect of a happy life. I love to read, and so making sure that I have enough time to read is a big priority in my happiness. For other people, that wouldn't be the case. But sometimes you sort of think like, well, everybody loves shopping, everybody loves going out to bars, everybody loves watching football. But nothing's inherently fun. You know, you're only going to be happy if you build a life that's about what's true for you.
And I love how this kind of foreshadows your work on habits, which we're going to talk about next.
It's all about the self-knowledge.
So okay, number 6, the only person I can change is myself.
And this is frustrating because a lot of times you think with the happiness or habits, you know, like, well, this would be much better if someone else would just behave properly. But we really can only change ourselves. But what I have found is that when I change, others change. And when I change, a relationship changes. So sometimes it is possible to bring around larger changes that involve other people by just changing yourself. But if you imagine that you can set out to change someone, it's very frustrating for them and for you.
Right.
Yeah, we can only change. Yeah, we can only change ourselves.
Number 7, and it kind of is related to that. Happy people make people happy, but I can't make someone be happy. No one else can make me happy.
Right. And we really have to remember that in the end, it is our own actions, our own values, our own thoughts. And you know, sometimes I think people feel very burdened by their desire to cheer someone up or make someone happy. And you know, come on, look on the bright side. It's not so bad. You know, the glass is half empty, half full. But you can't make someone be happy. And also, if you're not happy, you can't expect that someone else is going to fix that for you. You know, whether it's your children or your spouse or your job, you know, really it has to come from you. And it's obviously other people play a big part in this. But in the end, we really have to work on it for ourselves.
It's an inside job.
Yeah.
And number 8, now is now.
And this comes from, it's the last line of Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House in the Big Woods, which is one of my favorite books in the whole world.
We're in Iowa.
Yeah. Now is now, and Laura thinks to herself, now is now. It can never be a long time ago. And it's just this, again, back to what you were saying, this awareness, this mindfulness, and to try to be understanding of what's happening right now and experience as it's happening, because it's really the only thing that we have. And I think many people feel that they're just rushing through the day so quickly they're hardly even registering what's happening. And we want time to be rich, and so now is now is always what I say to myself, to remind myself to really experiencing what I'm going through in the moment and appreciate it, because time will change everything.
What a great discussion. Here are some of the 8 splendid truths of happiness. To download a full copy of them, go to Gretchen Rubin's website. It's available at www.gretchenrubin.com. Next up, habits, how you can use them to become happier, healthier, and more productive. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome back to Resiliency Matters. Join best-selling author Gretchen Rubin and I as we discuss habits, using them to become happier, healthier, and more productive. So, Gretchen, beyond happiness, you research and write about habits.
Yes.
And unlike many habit formation experts, you say that the most important piece of forming habits is self-knowledge.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, a lot of times habit experts will sort of suggest a magic one-size-fits-all solution. You know, do it first thing in the morning, do it for 30 days, start small, give yourself a cheat day. But the thing is, those are strategies that work sometimes for some people, but they don't work for everybody all the time. And what I found is that in order to set ourselves up for success, we really have to begin by what's true about us, because the same habits that work for someone else won't necessarily work for us. So, you know, it makes sense on paper to get up early and do something and cross it off your list and, you know, do it first thing in the morning. But if you're a night person, you can barely get out of bed in time to go to work on time or to get your kids up for school. That's not going to work for you. So you really have to think about what's true for you so that you can shape the habits to suit you rather than trying to cram yourself into a, you know, one-size-fits-all mold.
So I'm excited we're going to dig into your latest book, Better Than Before. But you also wrote kind of a manifesto, a 12 Habits manifesto. So let's start there talking about some generalities, and then we'll get more specific. So you say what we do every day matters more than what we do once in a while.
Well, this is a very helpful thing to remember when you slip up, you know, because a lot of people, you know, a lot of us from time to time slip up. And you just have to remember, you know, what I do most days is more important than I do once in a while. So if most days I exercise, if most days I eat healthfully, if most days I'm patient with my children and don't raise my voice, you know, that's what you want to strive for, to be better than before. You know, it's not perfection. You don't want to beat yourself up if you do have those occasional lapses, because in the end, it's what you do most days that matters.
Right. Number 2, make it easy to do right and hard to do wrong.
Well, this has to do with the strategy of convenience and inconvenience, which are two of the most powerful habit formation strategies. Anything you want to get yourself to do, you want to make as convenient as possible. And if you don't want to do it, make it as inconvenient as possible, which means, like, should you pay a little bit more for the gym that's right across the street from your office? Yes, because even walking a block out of your way is going to make it that much less convenient, and it's going to make that much harder to form the habit. Or something like you don't want to watch too much TV. Well, instead of keeping the remote control right next to the right on the coffee table, put it on a high shelf behind a closed door. So if you're going to get it, it's just a little bit more work to do it. Every little step that you have to take. I mean, even things they've shown that if a salad bar, if people are using tongs instead of spoons, they take less food. Any little barrier makes us less likely to do something. Any little making it that much easier is going to encourage us. So this is a really effective way to tinker with your habits.
Love it. The power of environment.
Yes.
So important. Number 3, focus on actions, not on outcomes.
Yes. Now, sometimes people want to be very much like, I want to write a bestseller, or, you know, I want to have a fantastic bikini body. Well, you can't decide to do that, but you can decide to write for half an hour every morning. You can decide to give up sugar. You know, so focus on the actions that you can control, not the outcomes, because you cannot control outcomes, but you can control what you're doing. And if you control what you're doing, then that's how you're going to make progress towards that outcome.
Makes sense. Number 4, by giving something up, we may gain.
Yes, I mean, I have to confess, this is very true for me, because I'm the kind of person who finds it easier to give something up altogether than to indulge in moderation. But for many people, you know, we're often focused on, you know, oh, you only live once, or I owe it to myself, or I don't want to miss this opportunity. But it's you don't want to be thinking about what you want in just the near-term, immediate pleasure, but what's going to make you happier overall. And often what's going to contribute to a happier, healthier, more productive life overall is by giving something up in the present. So, you know, you think, oh, my project isn't due for a year. Why should I spend this beautiful afternoon working? It's like, well, you know, maybe if you give up that afternoon of leisure, in the end, you're going to gain something that's more important to you.
So, long-term perspective.
Yes.
Things often get harder before they get easier.
Yeah, no, it's just to remember that when you're forming a habit, often you do go through periods where it's a struggle. You know, once habits lock in, they eliminate decision and self-control. Actions become effortless, but it takes some time to get there. And often even something like clearing clutter. You know, often when you're clearing clutter, like, things get a lot worse before they get better. And so you just have to remember, well, you know, or when you're doing something not new and challenging, like I started a podcast with my sister, And it was really hard at the beginning because we didn't know what we were doing and we didn't have any habits, we didn't have any knowledge. And I had to remind myself, this is going to get harder, then it will get easier. And when you work through that, just remind yourself, this is just a phase. I'm going to go through a phase, and then at the end, it'll get easier.
And I have to ask, because we hear a lot of, it takes 28 days, it takes 30
right.
days, where do you come in on
There is no magic date. There's no magic number of repetitions that will govern a habit. Habits sometimes form overnight. You don't even repeat them one time before they lock in. That's like in the strategy of clean slate or the strategy of lightning bolt, which have to do with sudden change. But mere repetition isn't enough to lock in a habit.
I just wanted to
I
know.
That's one of the big habits myths. Yeah.
It is. All right, number 6, very powerful. When we give more to ourselves, we can ask more of ourselves.
Yes. And so one of the things when we're trying to keep our good habits is we're trying to ask something of ourselves. We're trying to stick to our good habits. We're trying to use our self-command. And what's true is that when we take care of ourselves, whether that's things like getting enough sleep, getting a little bit of exercise, making sure we don't get too hungry, and even giving ourselves healthy treats so we feel comforted and cared for and energized, then we can ask more from ourselves. And so if you want to ask a lot of yourself, you have to remember you can't just constantly be pushing out. You need to think about how you're going to recharge your battery, because that's the only way you can sustain it.
So that self-care and that self-compassion would be a big part of that as well.
Well, yes, but sometimes I think with self-care and self-compassion, people worry that it seems self-indulgent, and like this way, it's like it's not self-indulgent. It's about arming yourself to meet these challenges that you want to do.
So you can do more and give more.
Yes.
Here is tool number 2. I have given you the 6 truths about habits. Again, you can download Gretchen's Habit Manifesto at her website. More truths about habits and a juicy bonus tip when we come back. Hi, welcome back to Resiliency Matters. You can join Gretchen Rubin, best-selling author of her newest release, Better Than Before, as we discuss habits. Number 7, we're not very different from other people, but those differences are important.
Yes. And this is one of the things I talk a lot about in the book, is that, it's very easy to assume that everyone's like you. Everyone likes to get up early in the morning and get things done. Everybody wants to make their bed. Everybody has trouble resisting chocolate. Everybody loves to shop. Everybody struggles not to watch too much TV. Well, that's not true. It's maybe true for a lot of people, it may be true for you, but it's not necessarily true for everyone. And so I think the more we understand ourselves and how we're distinct from other people and how we're like other people, then the more we can make the decisions about our habits. And also how we can understand how, like in a family or a work environment or with friends, how they might be seeing the world in a different way from us. It's very easy to assume that everybody feels the same way, but they don't. They really are coming from very different places. They have very different perspectives, and the more you recognize what those differences may be, then the more forbearance you have for other people, and the more understanding you have of yourself.
It's so important for people who manage
Yes, absolutely.
Number 8, it's easier to change our surroundings than ourselves.
Yes, a lot of times with people with habits, they're like, I need to work on my self-control. I need more willpower. I need to get more self-esteem so I can put myself first. And to me, like, that's too abstract, that's too hard. It's like all inside your head. It's like, forget about that. What you can easily control is your concrete actions. So worry about changing your actions. Don't worry about like putting your health first. Worry about not eating fast food for lunch. Like, that's something that you can actually control. What are you eating for lunch? I'm packing a lunch and bringing it from home. Am I doing this? Yes. Did I do it? Yes. Check. What exactly am I asking from myself? The more concrete we are with our habits and our expectations for ourselves, the easier it is to carry it out. The more it's about internal change, then the more mushy it gets.
So be specific.
Be specific and be concrete.
Number 9, we can't make people change, but when we change, others may change.
Yes,
You've touched upon this.
Yeah, because This is the strategy of other people in my 21 strategies, that we have enormous influence on other people's habits, and they have enormous influence on us for the better and for the worse. And so sometimes, one way to change someone else, or one way that often does lead to change, is if we change. And I often think about this with my children, because I think if I want them to have the habit of going to bed on time, I need to get to bed on time. If I want the habit of sitting and reading a book instead of playing with their phone, I need to be sitting and reading a book instead of playing with my phone. That a lot of these things, we're passing habits back and forth. And so it's very important to realize that one of the most important influences that you have is your own example.
It's very powerful. We have a lot of parents who watch the show, so that's very helpful. Number 10, we should make sure the things we do to feel better don't make us feel worse.
Well, and because a lot of times the very things that people do to make themselves feel better are the very bad habits that make them feel bad. So for instance, research shows that women who are very worried about their weight often eat in order to feel better, or gamblers who are under a lot of financial pressure go gambling in order to make themselves feel better. And so, and a lot of times with the habits, it's like you're so exhausted that you kind of can't even get yourself to go to bed, and so you end up staying up late watching reality TV because you're so exhausted you can't get yourself into bed. And so you want to make sure that whenever you're doing something to make yourself feel better, that it's something healthy. It's not something that in the end is going to make you feel more drained, more discouraged, more depleted. Because in a way, bad habits are their own punishments. There's kind of this poetic justice to bad habits, where the very thing that you're doing as an indulgence is the punishment itself. And so you want to break that cycle.
It has those natural consequences.
Those natural consequences.
Yeah. Number 11, we manage what we monitor.
Yes, and this is, this is just the strategy of monitoring, and we all know it. If you want to eat more healthfully, keep a food journal. If you want to stick to a budget, really track how you're spending your money. There's something almost magical about monitoring. Even if you're not trying consciously to change, if you just monitor what you're doing, you tend to start doing a better job. And this might be true of things that you might think are abstract. Like if you want to, I wanted to spend more time with my older daughter once she got to high school. So I was like, I'm going to monitor that. I'm going to set aside time every week. Are we doing it? If we're not doing it, I want to be aware of it, instead of just sort of having a vague sense that it was an aim that I had. I really kind of made a slot for it so that I would know whether I was doing it or not.
I love that. So it can be everything from wearing a pedometer to scheduling time with loved ones.
Yes.
And the last one, once we're ready to begin now.
Yes, yes, because it's very tempting to think, well, tomorrow will be better. Like tomorrow I'm going to be, I'll be more relaxed, I'll have more time. Tomorrow sounds really great, but really now is the time to begin. The only time that we can act is now. And so, and just to remember, starting is hard. But once you get started, then that's how you can proceed. And so, and I think one of the things I try to do in the book is to give people a ton of ideas of different ways that they can start, so that when they feel like I'm ready to make this change, they have a lot of ideas about this is a way I can go about it, so that I'm setting myself up for success, and they have that desire to begin now because they see a way that they can succeed.
And I love that about your books, that you talk about tendencies.
Yes.
And it's not right, it's not wrong.
Yes.
It's that self-knowledge.
Yes.
It's how we roll.
Right.
And
So
the sooner we can be aware of that and work with it, the happier and healthier, more productive.
Yes, and that's really important, because I think a lot of times people are like, well, if this isn't working, then there's something wrong with me. Or if this isn't working, there's something wrong with you. Or if this works for me, that means therefore it must work for you. Well, not necessarily. People have come to these things in very different ways. And since I've done all this research, I have a lot more understanding of how people are different. Because I used to think, well, if everybody just did what seemed like the right way, then why don't they? It's like, well, they see the world in a different way. We just all have a different perspective.
So here is tool number 3. I have set forth these truths about habits. Again, you can visit Gretchen's website to download a copy for yourself. When talking to Gretchen, she taught me about using a clean slate to create new habits. And this really impacted me, because I was back from a long trip to Thailand and I was using this. I've continued to use it. It works, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Learn about a clean slate.
Clean slate is something that's not always open to us. It has to do with when we're going through a big transition, whether it's like a transition of relationship, like a marriage or a divorce or a new baby, or a transition of circumstance, like a new job or a new school, or often moving. And in one study of successful habit change, 36% were associated with a move. So if you're moving, that's a really good time, because what happens is the transition wipes away all your old habits, so these new habits can crowd in more easily. And I heard the greatest example just the other day. A woman emailed me, and so she'd gotten in a really bad habit of eating fast food on her way home from work. And she said it was, she was losing money and gaining weight, and she wanted to change, but she just, day after day, she just kept turning into the fast food joint. But then she started leasing a new car, and at least new car smell and everything. And she realized she was getting ready to go home, and she thought, this is my clean slate. I'm in this new car, and I'm just going to make the rule. In the new car, when I'm driving this car, I can't have fast food in this car. And she was able to successfully change the habit, even though before it had been very hard. There was just something new enough about that transition that allowed the new habit to come in. And then she just absolutely never did it, so then she never started, so then the habit faded away.
So I wonder if you could create some newness in your life, even maybe a new lunch box or bag, or a new...
Yeah, rearranging furniture, driving to work in a different way. I think there are ways that you can try, depending on what the habit is, absolutely, where you could create some kind of a difference that would allow new habits to crowd in. So it's an opportunity that we don't want to miss, because it's very powerful, and it's an easy time to change habits.
And that's the power of a clean slate. I want to give a special thank you to IWLCleads.org. They help facilitate this interview. And thank you for joining us on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.